Welcome to IGN Anime Club, episode 6.
Yay!
Yay! We almost... Yay, anime! So someone pointed out in our comments that our kind of phrase has become yay anime, which is completely accidental, so yay anime!
Yay, so catchphrase.
Yay anime.
We just need a mascot to go with it.
Yeah,
Yes,
so...
exactly.
Yeah, mascot would be cool eventually someday.
Oh, wow.
We'll figure it out.
Aspirations, goals.
Yeah.
Perhaps
so
you could eventually have a contest.
maybe.
Ooh.
Maybe more contests. We have announcements on
Yeah,
contests.
that's...
Anyway, so for new listeners who don't know who the heck I am, I'm Miranda Sanchez, one of your hosts. Alaina Yi, one of your other hosts. Hi. I totally just messed it up. As always, another host, but Alaina Yi, so much better. And Meghan Sullivan.
Who is sitting in Elena's seat, which is
It's
where the
not
confusion
my
maybe
comes in.
maybe that's what messed me up. I was like, wait, that's not Meghan.
Where'd she
that's
go?
Alaina. Wah. So okay, yeah. And with us, as always, we have our fourth rotating chair, our guest, Jared Petty.
Yay!
Hi. Wow. That is the warmest welcome I have ever received to anything.
I'm very happy to have you
We've
on.
been
That was
waiting to
wonderful.
have you on.
Well,
It's
thank you for having me.
fantastic.
Yay.
Yeah, there's so many people in the office we want to have on. Of course, guests outside. If you didn't catch, last week we had Crunchyroll guests on. Victoria and Evan, if you guys want to check that out.
Yeah,
They're
it was
awesome.
a lot of fun.
They're super, super knowledgeable about everything there is to know about anime.
Yeah, they do work at Crunchyroll, so that's
Still,
good.
it was awesome.
All right, so let's jump into the show. First off, we want to announce our contest winners.
Yay.
We had our first ever contest winners since we did have Crunchyroll guests on. They brought us over some cool prizes to give away. We had 90-day Crunchyroll memberships, and we held a contest both on Twitter and on Facebook. We asked everybody to share what was like the most, or how has anime impacted your life. And it was really sad. I mean, not like sad, not like bad. It was just like some of the entries were just like, I feel for you. It was really heart wrenching, and it's like, kind of cool to realize how much anime really affects our lives and just media in general, and how whenever you get really passionate or you have like a really beautiful story, it can just make your life a lot better.
I felt like every single entry, and I'm not just saying this because you're supposed to say it, every single entry was wonderful. Either people were inspired to chase their dreams, it got them through depression, sickness, bullying. Something about anime allows people to escape, and it also inspires them to go out there and be the best that they can be. So I got a little misty-eyed reading some of these.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And some of them were like happy stories where it's just like, I want to go out and pursue my dream as a teacher, or I've been really sick and anime's gotten me through some tough times, or I lost somebody, or I was being bullied in school, and anime got you guys through so many things. And thank you for opening up and sharing that
absolutely.
with us.
Yeah, that transparency is powerful. The art people create, it inspires us in good times and lifts us up in bad times. And I think that's a really wonderful thing. I've seen a lot of that recently in my own life with what's gone on, and I'm just happy we have these things.
Yeah.
I'm happy that we have these beautiful paintings that come to life that people create for us to make everything a little brighter.
Yeah.
That's so poetic, Jared.
I know.
No.
It's
really
so
cute.
you on,
And
Jared.
it's so early in the morning.
Okay, now I'm just gonna sit over here and turn colors and turn red. I'm like, gosh.
That's okay. Because then Miranda can announce the winners.
Yeah, so again, thank you guys all so much for your entries. Like, it was really awesome to read them. Some people submitted stuff with like, I already have Crunchyroll, don't give me anything. I just wanted to share my story, and that's really amazing. And if you want to share your stories, whatever, connect with us on Facebook. Like, that group is amazing. Like, it's so awesome how like what a great community has come up out of that. And so if you want to join that, it's facebook.com/groups/IGN Anime Club. But let's get to the winners, which was so hard to choose.
It was really hard.
We eventually kind of just picked our favorites, like a few, and then we had to write all their names down, and anyone who like doubled up or something, we wrote their names down like twice, and we had to like throw it in a bucket and do the shaffle it, because we couldn't just pick. It was just so difficult.
So you pulled out of a hat
Yeah.
from the best submissions.
We pulled out of
Wow.
a hat, so that's
Okay.
It was
how
too hard
ended
to
up.
choose.
Yeah,
Like,
it was way
we
too hard.
couldn't
There's so
fix
many
on one
fantastic
person.
entries. So these are kind of a little bit random, except for Twitter. I think Twitter we were able to choose.
Yeah,
like,
we
one
actually
that stood out
had
really well.
one really strong standout.
Right. So again, thank you guys all for your entries. We will try to do more contests in the future. Of course, we'd love to do that. And
So if you didn't win
guys
this
cool
time,
stuff.
we'll have another contest, and you can try
Sometime.
again. Because
Yeah.
they were all really wonderful entries. Like, no joke. They
Yeah.
were great.
Yeah. So with that being said, our Twitter winner was Patrick Hawkinson at Virtuous Lomax. It says, this is his tweet. We can read the whole tweet since it's short. The story is too long for 140 characters, but my favorite anime, Great Teacher Onizuka, led me back to college at 28 to become a teacher, which is
That's
phenomenal. Like,
Also,
that's really great.
if you run your classroom the way that he does, that's amazing. Please send video. I totally want to see this.
Yes. And then for our Facebook winners, we have Brian J. Tyree. And kind of just to summarize this post is that middle school is hard, growing up is hard, and anime kind of got him through middle school, and kind of comfortable with his sexuality and finding friends. And, of course, a big common theme was finding more of yourself and being comfortable with who you are, and, of course, finding friends, because we can all unite through anime, no matter what you like.
Yeah,
so.
Middle school is a tough time. You
Yeah.
couldn't pay me money to go back to middle school, so it's great that he was able to find a group of friends that he can relate to in middle school through anime.
Yeah.
Yep. And then our second Facebook winner is Nidu Akena. And he said he watched a lot of anime. For him, the turning point was Neon Genesis Evangelion because,
Oh, Ava.
yeah, always Ava. There's always Ava. And he was bullied a lot, had a lot of troubles in school, and he just related a lot with Shinji, which is, of course, like an adolescent thing. Like, he is going through adolescence. Of course, if you've watched Ava, you know it's a story of adolescence and growing up, even though not all of us will go out to save the world and fight in a giant mech suit. But,
Or play that much Sega Saturn in an anime, which happened several times with them.
That's
He's
true.
forever playing Sega Saturn because they sponsored the show, which is cute.
yeah, so thank you guys so much for your entries again. We'll send out those awesome prizes out pretty soon. So, yeah.
And thank you to Crunchyroll
you.
for sponsoring
Yeah,
that.
thank you
Yeah,
to
that's
Crunchyroll for giving
awesome.
us some cool prizes. Yeah,
Cool.
I'm just like,
I know,
so
it's
many
all the
good- there's
feelings
just
in your
so
chest,
so many
all
feels.
congealing at once.
Yeah, so let's get into what we're watching. As always, as we like to start the show. I guess someone actually asked me on Twitter whether or not I was watching Fate Stay Night. Unlimited Blade Works. I forget that I always have to mention which one I'm watching because there's a Fate Zero, which is very similar. It's obviously the same storyline. Not same, but it comes from the same visual novel kind of esque, same world. And they're compared a lot because they have a lot of similar characters and crossovers. And people are like, you have to watch Fate Zero first. And I was just like, no, I'm watching Fate Stay Night first. Anyway, and there's a good reason for that. I think you get some not spoilery, because obviously it came first, but some more background for Fate Stay, which is, the weird thing is you almost don't want that for the series. I think if you're going in blind to Fate Stay Night, you're fine. Just go for it. It's good. That's kind of how I did it.
How are you liking it? Because I have a friend who's been watching it, and he hates it.
What?
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
Hates
What are his
it.
complaints? What's he
He
not
didn't
like
actually get into specifics, but it was, I know him. We've known each other a long time, decades. Known him a long time. And he just from the way he posted, I could tell he just was not having any of that.
I've seen the first couple of episodes, and I thought it was okay. I didn't hate it, but I didn't instantly love it. I know people who do love it, though, so
Yeah,
seems
I
divisive? I don't
really
know.
enjoy it. The animation is so beautiful. The fight scenes are so good.
Yeah, the animation's really good.
Yeah, it's solid. I also just really like the plot. This most recent episode that came out had a very big reveal, and it's something maybe some people picked up on, but somehow I just completely missed. I was like, oh, okay. There's some things that kind of didn't make sense, and this is finally where that all makes sense. It's just that reveal.
This is where it clicks.
It's just that very satisfied, oh. And some of my friends were like, oh yeah, I totally knew that. I was like, how? So I mean, just really awesome show. It's kind of all I had time for this week. I had to go see my sister graduate, which is of course awesome. But
How was that? Yeah. Well, you just said it was
Well,
awesome. I was going to throw that
it was
question in.
awesome, but also I was in Oklahoma.
Okay.
And if you live in Oklahoma or if you haven't been following the weather at all, there's a ton of tornadoes. So it was constantly raining. The skies were grotesque. They're that greeny, yellow, gray. It was just
Oh,
oh,
yeah,
man,
that
this is
tornado
wrong.
color. Yeah, I
Oh my
hate
God.
that.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
The
Yeah,
sky turns
it's-
green. It's weird.
Very
Wow.
scary. Clouds go different directions.
Oh,
It
weird.
gets suddenly
Yeah.
very cold. I mean, this isn't my first time with tornado weather or tornadic weather warnings, craziness. I grew up in the Midwest in Texas and Oklahoma, so
Oh,
So
okay.
you know.
I was like, oh, this again.
Oh, yeah. See, I'm totally a California girl, so this
too.
is completely foreign to me. It's
Yeah.
kind of fascinating.
When a tornado is nearby in the sky before it drops, it feels like the world's about to end.
It's very
the
scary.
weirdest
Wow.
feeling.
the hairs on
Yeah,
your arms
all
stand
of your
up.
body is something. It's like when how an animal sometimes can tell when something's wrong. That kicks on inside.
Oh yeah,
you.
Oh my gosh.
dogs barking.
Wow.
It's a thing.
It happens inside
It's very,
yeah.
very creepy. Luckily there were no tornadoes near us, so
Good.
Wow.
yeah.
Crazy.
I'll keep my earthquakes and fires. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, earthquakes don't scare me at all. It's so funny because, like, it's, like, flipped, I think, because it's, like, whatever you're used to. So I have friends who are, like, who live in, like, Tampa. And, like, hurricanes freak me out. But every time they hear about an earthquake, they're like, I heard there's an earthquake in California. Are you okay?
Right.
And I was like, I woke up, I rolled over, and went back to sleep.
Yeah. I used to live
it
in
was a
Florida. We
little
had
one.
hurricane parties. You know, that was.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So the thing with tornadoes is that they're not super predictable. Like, you know that there's, like, tornadic weather. Like, okay, there's going to be heavy rain. There's going to be, like, weird winds going on. And you kind of know the areas. But where they drop and when they drop happens so fast, and they can be so destructive that it's a little bit more unpredictable. Like, I'm still scared of tornadoes. I
Yeah.
have nightmares, so.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Are there any
Moving
good
on.
anime about tornadoes?
I was just gonna ask
Oh,
that
God.
question.
Yeah.
Are there any
I
disasters?
don't know.
I don't know, because, like, I don't think they have those in Japan, but I think there's probably, like, tsunamis and stuff that probably crops up,
Yeah, like,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
to think of it.
Typhoons. And,
It's
Yeah.
hard to. I don't really know of any anime that have, like, really capitalized on.
Call to action. Does
natural
anyone out there
disasters.
know of like a instead of a disaster movie or disaster show, like
I
a
mean, like,
disaster
there's, like,
anime?
Yeah.
Apocalyptic sort of things, but I don't remember ever seeing. I mean, like, I'm sure it's come up in some
It's
show.
got- yeah,
Tornadoes.
Like one little
somewhere.
arc, like,
Somebody-
oh, there's like a typhoon coming or something.
Maybe.
Or, like,
Has
some
anybody
Definitely
tackled-
earthquakes.
Earthquake.
Definitely
Yeah, lots
earthquakes.
of. Has anybody tackled Fukushima yet? In a meaningful way in an anime?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think. I think it's too sensitive of a subject. They're still dealing with it.
Yeah.
Like literally still dealing with the fallout. So.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. I would love to know if there's like a tornado chaser anime, because that'd actually be kind of cool.
That would be
Would be.
awesome.
Like Twister, the anime.
Right. Well, I mean,
Oh,
I
I'm
just
just
they
saying.
would put probably such a crazy spin on it that it would be kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just-
I'm sold. Absolutely, especially if we
All
use
right, so
giant
we make that.
robots to chase the tornadoes, or
Capture
some,
'em,
yeah,
like
exactly.
Squirrels.
so much better.
Yeah.
Yay. All right.
I don't know if I'd watch it.
No fun.
But yeah, no, I don't like tornadoes. It's personal. Anyway, what are you guys watching?
You want to go, Jared?
Yeah, I'll
Our
go.
guest, of course.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. By the way, thank you so much for having me on. It makes me happy.
Thank you. We're excited to have you.
So this week, most of the anime I consume is feature length. I don't watch a tremendous number of series. I tend to watch anime movies, but I also really enjoy anime shorts. And so I've always meant to watch Voices of a Distant Star, and I finally sit down and did that this week, which is about a 25-minute little one-shot anime. It's an endearing little story about a middle school boy and a middle school girl in the mid-21st century during an interstellar war. One of them gets sent off to the military, and the other stays behind, and she's traveling at light speed, and they're sending messages back and forth across the Keitai. And as she gets farther and farther away and goes faster and faster, he's getting older, she's not.
Oh.
And it takes longer and longer for the messages to reach him. Yeah.
Oh my
and,
gosh, this sounds like heartbreaking.
It is, and some of it is tropey. There's the middle school thing, and for some reason she's still wearing her middle school jumper while she's flying a mech through space. I'm not
Makes
quite
sense.
sure
That's
why.
Perfect attire. So
yeah.
so comfortable.
Or at least the tie. But for and so some of it's a little tropey and very melancholy and sentimental, like a lot of anime is. But it works. I enjoy it. I thought it's definitely worth the less than half an hour you spend watching it, and it's a complete story. The end is kind of ambiguous and open to interpretation, like a lot of Japanese cinema. And I really liked it quite a bit. And that's on Crunchyroll, so you can go there and watch it.
Oh.
I'm gonna go check that out.
Okay.
Yeah, Voices
Wow.
of a Distant Star.
Voices of a Distance.
Oh,
Noted.
so many tears this season, guys. I'm gonna be shedding so many of them.
What's making you shed tears? Or
Well,
not?
nothing. Yeah, so we talked about this. So nothing this week because I finally caught up on Plastic Memories because last week I was busy. I am so disappointed in this series right now.
No,
The
I
pacing
really
is.
like it.
I just feel okay. So I know you do, but hear me out. So I feel like that series is trying to do too much at once. Like, I think there's some times where it's like, oh, well, we're trying to be really cute and almost high school-y. And then there's some times where we're being, like, super punch you in the gut with emotions. And then we have this sort of quasi, like, love angle between the two main characters, but then it's kind of not. And then we have this like crazy dramatic thing happening in the background between like the big corporation versus our office, and like then that's not even like the whole list, guys. But I just feel like every every episode, like the feel of it changes because they're trying to insert something else for you to keep track of. And I actually feel like that detracts from how it opened, right? Where that first episode just goes straight for your heart, yanks it out through your chest and goes, here.
So this is like kind of the issue when you have like a 12 episode series or even 24 episodes. It just doesn't give you a lot of time for things. And I get what you mean. It feels a little rushed maybe at some points.
Not even rushed. It's just like not focused.
So what I'm seeing is that they're trying to get us to have more relationship with the main, android.
I think,
Isla.
yeah, I just feel
And so
like
that's why they're trying to focus on like, oh, this is how she works with the main character, and this is how she works with the company, and this is her experiences, and this is why she's kind of becoming the center of it, as opposed to, and like why is a little bit more of a love angle to it, because you want them to have those relationships, and that you see how hard it is for them to actually pick it up, like go pick up other, dying androids. Like it's giving you that perspective of, let's build this relationship, and then how it feels whenever they finally have to go pick up and get rid of the android.
I see where you're coming from, but I feel like they don't do it well because they try too hard to insert like bits of fan service and other things that I feel detracts from that. So if they didn't try so hard to kind of give this romantic angle to like the relationship between the two main characters, between Ida and Skasa.
Yeah.
And then I would be able to buy into that a little bit more. But every time they try to like forcibly push in this like very tropey kind of thing, it really ruins my ability to connect to any of it, because then I just sit there thinking, what do you want from me? Do you want me to find this comedic? Do you want me to find this endearing? Do you want me to find this, like this right here? And if it wasn't such a short series, because I know it's only 13 episodes, at least that's what it's been advertised as, I'm thinking we're already at episode 6. Like, where's my payoff for all these different fronts that I have to keep track of?
I think it's kind of evident where this is going to end. Like,
Oh, I know,
mean, it's very,
but it's
like
just
not spoiler at all. It's just like, well, obviously it's about a show about them having to go pick up dying androids. Mm-hmm. They're working with androids. Where is this going to go, guys?
Right.
I don't know. I kind of disagree, though. I like the pacing. I like how they insert those, like, funny moments. Like, even in episode 6 was very tuggy between, let's be funny, but then the previous episode was very sad and very, like, it went back to the whole, let's go find a dying android and, like, the issues that happens. Like, it kind of gives you a little bit more insight to the world with, like, the android black market and, like, how when they don't get picked up properly. And
that was super interesting, except the title of the episode ruined it for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, it already gave away, like, the ending, right? So you didn't have any, like, build up and then release. It was just like, okay, like, how is this going to play out?
But
I think I'm just jaded.
I was so I was a little concerned with the episode, like, beginning of episode 6. I think I have, like, 5 minutes left in episode 6. I tried to watch it before this, like, super fast. But I was concerned that they weren't going to go back to that emotional point, but they did. And they did it really well, I thought. I mean, that's just personally, I think it's going well, surprisingly. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Like, we are halfway through.
Yeah.
We'll see what they
I don't know. Like, it might be like one of those things. I'm trying to be fair, right? So it could be one of those things where they build and it kind of dips a little because they're trying to do something, and then it'll pick back up because it'll finish strong. Mm-hmm. But I have to wait and see, right?
Yeah.
So, but right now, I'm a little grumpy.
Yeah.
I think I'm just going to be the grumpy old person on this show.
No, I don't think you're the grumpy old person. I think that the anime you like is kind of like a Myers-Briggs personality test. You can get a room full of people who enjoy this together, and it's very, very rare that they're all going to agree on anything. That's one of the things I like about this show is sitting and watch this kind of point-counterpoint thing, because it intrigues me. I want to check at least an episode or two of this out now, which I haven't watched at all.
It's going to be interesting because Miranda will definitely agree with me on this for sure. Like, that first episode just wrecks you. It just wrecks you. And then the second episode, you're like, huh.
Okay.
It's kind of, I kind of get it, though. Like, they don't want to do, like, that monster of the week, but it's like the
I get it.
Of the week kind of
no,
thing.
I get it.
Yeah.
Was the first episode a pilot and then the rest was greenlit, or was the whole series greenlit at once?
I think it's just the whole series.
I think they make the whole series at once.
Okay, I was wondering in this case.
So
sometimes that affects that tone.
That's true.
Super interested to see what you guys think, of course.
Yeah, let us know. Let me know if I'm alone on this.
Which side are you on?
I'm
no,
sure
just
you're
kidding.
not alone.
No, I mean, like, of course, everybody interprets shows differently, so
Cool.
Let us know who's right. Just kidding.
Rochambeau. We'll see who's right.
So, what else are you watching?
This week, that's really all I had time for.
Okay.
I still need to get back to My Love Story and Arslan, and I've been meaning to pick up Owari no Seraph and Renee and like a million other things. There's just so many series.
There's actually a lot of good series this
Yeah.
season, so which is nice. Last season wasn't terrible. Like there were some like surprises like in winter, but for the most part, it's just like it's fine. This one has had a lot of really awesome shows. Megan, what are you watching?
So I have been enjoying Psycho-Pass, which is in the same vein as Ghost in the Shell. In fact, I think it's by either the same writer or director. I can't quite remember off the top of my head right now. But I'm really enjoying it. There's no fan service. There's no high school involved. It's an adult sort of cyberpunk thriller. And I don't know. I've watched the first 3 episodes, and so far I'm really enjoying it. So if you don't know what it is, basically it takes place in like 100 years from now, so it's like 2113 instead of like 2013, which I think is when the first season actually started. And basically you live in this future where this computer system called the Sybil system evaluates everyone's psyche and basically tries to determine if you have the makeup of a criminal or not.
This is a Minority Report.
Kinda, I guess. That's not a bad comparison. And so, yeah, it basically measures the populace's like mental state and then decides like even if you haven't done a crime, you can be locked up. If it thinks that there's potential for you to be a criminal, you can get locked up, or you can be what's sort of called like a hunting dog for the police to track down other criminals. Or if your threat assessment is very high, you have permission from the government to kill the supposed suspect. But it brings up the whole question of is it okay to ethics, like is it okay to arrest someone if they haven't done anything, even if you think they're going to do something bad.
Google Analytics gone bad.
Yeah.
What we have here. Yeah.
But
no, in the face of something like, you look at like the NSA bulk metadata leaks and the fact that they're examining data like that, looking for these kind of patterns now in the world we live in.
Yeah.
We know that our own government is looking at its own citizenry and using the same kind of information to try to predict the same kind of patterns.
Yeah.
I mean, that's happening at this moment. That's not all that much of a reach. That's very Philip K. Dick.
It's
I'm
not.
sold. I've got to watch this.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. It's really good. I mean, some people were saying they didn't really like it. They either thought it was too slow, or I think their expectations were very high because they're thinking Ghost in the Shell, Ghost in the Shell, Appleseed, Ghost in the Shell. And I think that it's just it's not going to be up to that level, but it's still a pleasant surprise. I mean, I noticed that some people in the comment section feel this way too, where it's like there's nothing wrong with fan service or ecchi or things going on in high school, like high school dramas, but it feels like every anime has that angle where it's both fan service and high school drama and all this other stuff. And so I was looking for something different. So I'm still watching JoJo. I'm still watching Kill la Kill. I'm still watching Trigun. I haven't given up on any of those. I'm enjoying them. But I wanted something a little more mature, something a little more intellectual, for lack of a better term. And I came across Psycho-Pass, and so far I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, how long's the series?
I think I don't know, actually. I don't know. It's on the second season right now, or it started back in late 2014, I think is when the second season started. So I'm just catching up now, so I can't say for sure how many episodes it is.
Neat.
But so I've been watching that, and I told Miranda this the other day, and Alaina, that I've been watching Food Wars. And, I love the food porn. I'm not so keen on the porn. That doesn't need to be there.
That
I mean,
ecchi.
to be fair, it's ecchi for both men and women. Like, the guys are surprisingly buff. They get naked, too. But
Muscles.
it's a lot of muscles. So I'm impressed with that, but it just detracts a little bit from the food. Like, I know that's the whole shtick. Like, this food is like orgasmically good. Like, I know that's the shtick, but I'm like, you're so close to having like a really compelling story about a boy who's trying to follow in his father's footsteps, and he wants to be just as great, and there's this friendly rivalry between them, and he has to go to this fancy culinary school and put up with all these snobby kids. Like, there's like a story there that, it's not particularly original, but it's compelling, and then it keeps getting interrupted by clothes flying.
I don't know what you're talking about here. Cupcakes and buff dudes. This sounds like everything I want in life.
Well, go ahead and watch it and see what you think, because a lot of people like it.
I have a question.
Yep.
And I only am asking this because I didn't even know this was a thing. But I mentioned to a friend of a friend that I was getting back into anime. And they asked me, okay, well, what kind do you like? And I said, well, just recommend anything. And they said, well, do you like good-looking guys? And I was like, yeah. I mean, that's where I lean. And they said, well, do you like good-looking guys that are for men or good-looking guys that are for women? And I was like, there's actually a distinction. So apparently there's a thing in anime where there's some characters that are good-looking men that are actually drawn for men and drawn for women. I didn't know. But apparently, if that's a thing, what kind are the guys in Food Wars?
Well, so the thing
It's like all variety. Like,
yeah, there's a
Sweet.
ton of variety. I mean, all
Good.
the women are babes. I think that's what's a little annoying about fan service is it
So-
always tends to lean towards females, and they're always outrageously proportioned. Like they're very busty. Let's just say where a lot of anime.
There's
the
still
guys-
like at least a decent variety too within the women though. Like I'd argue that. Like of course you do get the super busty, but then you also have like kind of normal.
Well, I think Food Wars is sort of the exception because the guys get naked too.
Well,
You
yeah,
don't
I'm
see
specifically talking
anything
about
too
Food
much,
Wars.
but you see enough. But I feel like a lot of anime, it's sort of fallen into this habit of just super busty women and a lot of fan service and up the skirt shots and
Fetishism.
yeah,
Yeah.
basically is fetish. I can't say it now. Great.
That's a difficult
fetishism.
word to say. Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Fetish.
Fetishism.
Go watch Psychopaths.
Yeah, definitely something we want to talk about later is about fan service and where does it belong, where does it not? You know, that whole good.
There's nothing wrong with it. I just I just need a break every once in a while.
But also Food Wars is very upfront about what it is. It's not
it doesn't
like,
hide it. It doesn't
oh,
surprise
by the
you.
way, we have fan service. It's like, no, this isn't etchy. It's like it's gonna get it. If you don't like it,
There's
not
no,
the show
there's
for
no
you.
false
Yeah,
advertising with it.
right. So
I'll keep that in mind.
it's appreciated. Yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into our topics.
What about you, though? What are you watching?
Oh yeah, I said.
Did you say it?
Alaina Body Works.
Yeah.
Tuesday
Oh,
night.
Wow,
so long
that's
ago.
right.
I know.
I'm so sorry.
It
It's
feels
already
like a Monday.
Tuesday, and I'm already acting like it's Friday. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, so we wanted to talk about manga a little bit.
That's
so
right.
we forgot something last episode. And
Oh,
it was my
well,
fault. Well, we
okay.
also kind of ran out of time too.
We did run out of time. So I just wanted to. So if you didn't tune in last week, we had, both Victoria and Evan here from Crunchyroll, and they talked a little bit about what it's like to work in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And they were giving kind of career tips for people who are interested in trying to break in. So I used to work for Viz Media. I worked on the manga side of things. I worked for Shoujo Beat when that's still around, and Shonen Jump. Those were two magazines at the time. And I actually wanted to chime in at the time, but we kind of ran out of time. So I just want to do a quick follow-up to that and just add something really quick about in terms of career advice. And it's not specific to manga specifically. It's more of just breaking into manga, anime, like in terms of like translating and like being in the industry from this side. Like I don't know what it's like to work in Japan, obviously.
Right.
But one thing I will say is just be really mindful of the of the cultural divide. So I've seen some people when they break in that they're super passionate, they're super enthusiastic, and they want so much to do things a certain way because they know it'll work here, and they know that certain things are just going to click if we can do it in a certain way. But on the whole, Japanese companies tend to have very specific ways of doing things, and so it's really important to remember that when you're working with them to keep that in mind and be really respectful of that, because you're going to make a lot more headway if you recognize why. And like this is more particular to manga, which Victoria brought up actually last week, which is, there's some creators who decide they don't want their series turned into an anime, or, to have it licensed by this particular group or whatever. Like it depends on the creator, what they're comfortable with, right? Mm-hmm. So like keeping that in mind, just remembering that, if there are certain rules that they give you, you should follow them, because that shows that you're listening to them and that you respect what they want.
Generally a good idea,
Yeah.
following rules for jobs.
Well, it's interesting, though, because, I saw this clash kind of a lot, whereas, for example, for working in American industry, like if someone gives you a piece of art, you're going to use that to advertise that like property, you might flip it. And you're not going to think it's a big deal because that works with how the layout is and how it looks. But in Japan, if they tell you don't flip it, they mean don't flip that. And so on some of my coworkers who are more used to doing things in that style where you have more freedom would get very frustrated. And they would just kind of wonder why they couldn't do it. And so I think just keeping in mind that sometimes you're just going to have these rules that are in place, and just working with them makes life a lot easier and builds really good relationships.
So what did you do at Viz?
What did I do specifically?
Yeah.
So I was the essentially, forgot what my exact job title was. It's been a while. As managing editor for the two magazines. So it's basically making sure production ran smoothly. Speaking with our production coordinator, who actually made sure that those magazines printed, because this is when we still had a physical product. Making sure that our pages went to the licensors and got approved. So, you know, we would basically relay out a chapter from like Naruto or Bleach or Skip Beat or whatever we had in the magazine at the time. And also just working with the different editors to make sure that, you know, we would have translated pages ready on time, that, you know, if we had sections for like fan art and, you know, an editor's letter and things like that, like everything was running smoothly. So I kind of just saw everything that was happening and making sure that nothing caught on fire to the point where
That'd be really bad.
How did you get your job?
I saw an opening for it, and well, actually, it was really interesting. Let me think. I originally applied for a different position. That position was filled by somebody else who was amazing to work with, because I ended up working with her later on. And they ended up creating that position for me because they liked me so much. That was very fortunate. That was a very lucky stroke. And I think that does speak a bit to Victoria and Evan's point last week, which was be really good at what you do, and that helps open doors for you. So that way you can make it anywhere in any industry, but if you want to work in a particular one, it just makes it even easier for them to say yes to you, because they know that you're an amazing engineer, or you're an amazing translator, or you're an amazing, you know, product manager, et cetera, et cetera.
So what other difficulties do you have with working on manga, like in the United States? Like, what other challenges do you guys see? I mean, obviously translations and like different advertising and designing different things for the manga is always a hard thing. Like you said, there was like a lot of rules, and like it's a little bit more to the rules. Like there's not a lot of room for adjustment, it sounds like.
You know, I have to say a lot of caveats with this,
Sure.
because I've been back in games for about 5 years now, so things have changed a lot. Back when I was working with manga, that was a period when the Japanese companies were still getting used to the idea of digital distribution. Like they hadn't quite wholeheartedly embraced it yet. I mean, that was also that point in time where Borders was closing. You know, they had gone bankrupt and they were closing all their stores, and that had been one of the major distribution points for manga in the United States, at least. And things were just changing in general. So I don't know. I mean, it's this really, I feel like I'm repeating myself at this point, where it's so specific to the property you're working with, the publisher you're working with.
Yeah.
Again, and it just boils down to your relationships and just making sure that, you know, everything's in order, that everyone understands each other. And then when things come up that can't be avoided, you just do your best to make that work. Cool. Which is super general sounding, not helpful, I know. I'm sorry.
It's good insight on assumptions, you know, assumptions of people from a completely different culture, different than ours, and just keeping that in mind, that they have good reasons for looking at things the way they do. They grew up looking at the world from a different perspective. And
it's the same in the game industry, too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not just us in Japan. It's us in a lot of other countries. You know, you go to a different place, people think about things different ways because of the context of where they grew up, and that kind of, you know, we think of, you talked about digital distribution a second ago. It's hard for a lot of Japanese people to imagine the necessity of digital distribution in a country that's so small and concentrated that anybody can walk to a bookstore. You know, 90% of the population can walk out their doors and buy magazines and buy books. It's hard to imagine there's another place in the world where that's not possible if you've never seen it with your own eyes. So that would affect your assumptions.
Sure.
You got to pour one out for Borders.
Yeah.
I know.
I really was upset when they closed down, because I like physical books. Like I love the feel of them and the smell of them, and just like like just having something physical in my hand is so magical. So.
That's what Amazon is for now, apparently.
No.
But,
Amazon Prime loves me.
I know. The one thing I will say is I actually don't own a lot of manga at like the tankobon, like the volumes anymore, because there are so many libraries branches in San Francisco where I see the kids reading them that I decided just to donate them because it just makes me so happy to see them because that was me when I was their age, you know? So I'm like,
give
okay.
books to libraries? You're the best.
Well, I lived in libraries growing up. So
Me too.
like to me it's really important to me personally to like donate and either it's money or books to them.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your time at Viz. I mean, that's cool and different. Like, we don't talk about manga much here because we're more focused on anime, but we like to hint on it every now and then.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
A lot of manga are turned into anime and vice versa.
Yeah. So it's important. Yay, anime!
Yay!
So, Jared, you brought a topic for us, right?
I suppose so. I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of anime in the United States. Now, I start this right here. I am not an expert in any way, shape, or form on anime. I am a casual. I really am. I am a casual. Absolutely.
There's no distinctions or judgment here.
Yeah.
I just like anime.
Yeah, I just like it.
Even the Pikachus.
Especially the Pikachus. I have this is an endearing lightning rat that stands here before me. But no, I really I enjoy the medium very much. I'm not an expert, but this new show here, I thought it might be good to touch on how this became a part of the culture that we live in today. How this tiny little island nation halfway across the world, one of its very particular artistic expressions became so important to so many of us. When you were talking about those contest entries and reading through some of those earlier, this has become something that has changed people's lives. How did that happen? And that's what I wanted to come and talk about some today. But this isn't a lecture series or anything, so please just jump in.
教えてください, sensei.
Sorry.
It's a
This is why I was
fascinating
so excited to
No.
have you on to get kind of more of this like historical perspective.
Well, again, it's going to be more anecdotal, okay? Because
Sure.
the fact is that there's some real experts on this that can give real spiels. Some of this ties into the fact that journey back in time to a world before cable. And yes, a world of very few channels. And a world of regional syndication, which is hard for us to think about. And, satellite and cable changed what's on television a lot, but it used to be that people in cities often decided what was on their individual television stations and what you saw at certain time slots, even on one of the big three stations. And the big three were almost the only three back then. What might be very different in New York than what somebody might see in San Francisco. A station manager might decide, hey, there's a place for this. So around the 1960s, there was at least one or two really smart people who figured out that, hey, cartoons, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but this is how they were thinking about it at the time. That's the verbiage that would have been in their heads. Cartoons are really easy to translate. Unlike most other shows, a kid's watching this, he doesn't care if the mouth doesn't match up with what's being said. He just wants to see race cars and explosions and people flying around. And somebody looked at Astro Boy and said, all we have to do is redub this and cut it a little, and we've got really cheap programming. And so that's what they did. Now, it wasn't the first, but I think it's the first one we could say was probably popularized.
It's hard to find what was first. It's kind of weird because you'll see some books that say Astro Boy was first. It's like, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
I think I saw a lot of stuff that said Three Tails was the first one. I don't really know. Like, I did try to do as much research as I could, and it was just one of those, we don't know. But it wasn't Astro Boy, even though that was the big kickoff.
Yeah, that's the one that got traction. But yeah, it wasn't Astro Boy, almost certainly. And the problem with this is we grew up in a research era where we're used to researching by typing things into a box and searching through hyperlinks. If we wanted to find this out, we'd have to dig through old filing cabinets and TV stations all over America. Yeah, microfiche probably even. Yeah, microfiche. What's that, Alaina?
Yeah, what is that?
Are you serious?
I don't think I know what that is.
Oh, really?
Oh my goodness.
It's a microfish.
Oh my goodness.
It's a tiny little fish.
I'm like imagining a little fish.
tiny fish.
Is it microfish or microfiche? I don't know.
Microfiche, I think.
Like,
Yeah.
a little fish's ear. And
It's
it goes
basically like a way that they would archive old newspapers because newspapers disintegrate. So it's I don't even know what the actual format is, and that's terrible because I'm our tech editor. But but basically you would get these. I even forget the format now, but you basically would have these I don't know, was it canisters?
They
like
were
film?
little canisters or little slides, depending.
And then you would put it into a
miniaturized.
projector, basically, and like that's how you would go through like old archived newspapers and magazines and clippings and stuff like that. Like that is how you did research.
Yeah, I
Right.
saw some of those at my university, so I
Yeah.
just didn't know what they were, but I
It's like old
know
school.
of them.
It's like the analog version of like a tape drive.
Yeah, and it really did have this tiny high resolution image. It was space saving, and it you know, because you could put a whole newspaper in a teeny tiny little picture, and they did for magazines some too. And some universities are trying to OCR these, you know, convert them to digital format, but it takes forever because there's so many of them. That's how you look up old things, and it's much slower than looking up new things. That's just why I think a lot of this history is lost until somebody sits down and again, we might be missing the great magnum opus of anime history. It may be out there, but I've never seen it. If it is, let us know. So this is more of an anecdotal account. I grew up in the early 1980s watching anime, but for a long time I didn't know it was anime. You know, Astro Boy came over. That wasn't what I was watching. Then there were a few other things. You had stuff like Battle for the Planets, which was Gatchaman, come over, stuff like that. I was watching anime, and I didn't know it was Japanese. I didn't know it was anime. I just knew it was cool cartoons with this kind of nifty art style, lots of big robots, things exploded, and nothing made any sense. Now, that's not a criticism of anime. That's a criticism of the way it was being presented to me, because these weren't really translations. And I've heard people say that these anime were censored because they were, you know, people thought of cartoons back then as something for children. And there was an idea that excessive violence or nudity was inappropriate for children, and therefore that needed to be removed from these programs. And it was, generally speaking. But it wasn't just censored. I think it's better to say that it was adapted. Because they would cut these down, and sometimes they would even string 2 or 3 similar-looking series together, intermix footage, create a new storyline, write a new script, and create a whole new show that was an amalgamation, an adaptation of other programs. I think you guys have talked about Robotech before, right? Okay, that's Robotech.
A little bit.
Yeah, Robotech is Macross and 2 other series recut, interspersed, and rewritten to form a whole new storyline. And that's what I grew up on. So you had that kind of weird thing, that kind of adaptation. Then you had weird situations like a cartoon like Transformers, which, okay, so this is odd. Transformers, is it an anime or not? It's based on 2 Japanese toy lines that were brought over here and combined into one and rebranded. The show was written in America, but the animation was done in Japan and South Korea, had a very Japanese vibe to it, was based on Japanese toys, and the show came back on television in Japan.
Oh my gosh.
So, is that anime?
That just bent my brain.
That's like a big question with like Korra too, and like Avatar series. It's not made in Japan, but it has like the sort of anime style. And then people are always just like, is it anime? I'm just kind of like, well.
It's a loving homage.
But a lot of this was actually drawn in Japan and based on Japanese properties, but
So
it was written in America.
Right. That's even more confusing.
Yeah, it's just weird. So you had these kinds of things all come together. Did any of you guys watch any of these kinds of weird early shows like that?
So it's really interesting listening to you talk about it because I was so young at the time that I actually used to mix up Robotech and Transformers.
Oh, wow.
And that was because because in my little brain, I knew both of them were kind of like this not American thing, because I think my parents might have mentioned it, or I could just tell like something was a little different. And I was like, well, they both based on robots, and they both have some kind of toy thing. And I used to get them mixed up all the time, which was forever this mark of shame for me later on.
Oh, really?
Because, well, when you're a nerd hanging out with the nerds who are like very specific about every granular piece of information, admitting to not being able to keep things straight, even as a tiny child, is kind of embarrassing.
No one is spared.
Nobody is spared.
Well, we've got to be free to make our mistakes. I mean, that's how we learn. So I'm sorry that you were subjected. And to your credit, you know, Transformers got a little mixed up with that too. There's at least one Transformers character that's actually there's a weird Gundam licensing issue, and it's a Gundam toy that became a Transformer who looks remarkably similar to the fighters, the Veritech fighters in Macross. So
goodness.
you know,
Wow.
if I'm getting this right, he might actually have been a Veritech. He may not even have been Gundam. Come to think of it. Anyway, I'll maybe I can get you that for the show notes. But he's a neat looking toy. I love him. Used to have him Jetfire. But yeah, so even they got a little mixed up occasionally with strange licensing stuff like that. And you had other, you had Go Lion, the Voltron. And then you had multiple Voltrons based on different Japanese TV series that were completely unrelated, but because it was, things combining into giant robots, gradually I kind of caught on the common look and feel of these old shows started to, I was like, where are these coming from? And I'm pretty sure it was actually through Palladium Books' Robotech role-playing game. That was licensed out to Palladium.
Oh, nice.
The same people who made the Ninja Turtles role-playing game and Rifts and some of these other tabletop games, they pointed out, hey, this is a Japanese thing. And I was like, whoa, that is so cool. Because Japan, if you were a kid back then, Japan was it, because Japan's where Nintendo was from.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah. And you knew about Japan from Nintendo. You knew that. Every kid knew that Nintendo was from Japan. And you knew about Japan because that's where ninjas were from. And ninjas were really big then. So for us, but I think, am I talking too much here?
No.
Okay. But I think that another reason that some of that was kind of under the surface was because around the same time this stuff was getting really popular, and especially as Nintendo rose, there was also this sort of subtle growing racism in American culture toward the Japanese economic menace.
Right. So there's some really old Disney cartoons that are just awful.
Yeah,
So super
and
racist.
It's interesting you bring that up because I kind of touched on that lightly in a previous episode where I think Max had kind of said something about wondering why I didn't quite take off, and I actually thought it was related to that because of that whole rivalry when it came to car manufacturing in Detroit having such problems in the late 70s.
Yep, I think there's a lot of that. Now, the older ones you're saying, Miranda, I think that's from a different era of Japanese racism.
Just a
but it was
before.
residual. Oh, I didn't mean to hit you there.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
but that was residual. But yeah, I think that economic role of it. There was a book that became very popular in the United States around this period of time called The Coming War with Japan, that depicted an armed conflict between us and Japan over the economic condition. There was a lot of racism going on. So a lot of these shows, I think, kind of hid their Japanese origin because it was easier to market it that way. I can't prove that, but it's a strong suspicion. But kids figured it out because kids, we didn't care about Detroit. We wanted more Mario. We wanted more giant flying robots and things that combine together to make bigger robots and ninja and all this. And back then there's this term that now is, I think, considered inappropriate, but it was before it was anime, it was Japanimation,
Right.
and you'd hear that a lot back then too. I don't think at the time anything was inferred by that, but of course the fact that it can be turned into a slur is one of the reasons it's been dropped. So you had that. Anybody want to jump in before I go on with the
No, I'm totally riveted, but I love that you brought up Nintendo because I was one of the original Nintendo kids as well. And I just remember thinking that we were so much cooler than our older siblings who had the Atari 2600, ColecoVision and everything. It was that NES was it, man. That was it. That whole generation. And I had all the, it's not really anime, but I had all the Hello Kitty stuff that had come back then. Like Hello Kitty has exploded mainstream pop culture, but it was either for little kids back then or it was very niche, and I remember that.
Yeah.
That was Japan.
And that was Japan again. Hello Kitty is a wonderful example. It was an infiltration, but there was just so much cool stuff. We and the Japanese have a really weird common cultural heritage. We are a lot more similar than we let on in many ways. And the Japanese, likewise, at that period of time, had some American kind of fetishism of their own. Cowboys were a huge thing in Japan for a while. Still are, actually, to a degree. But, it was just a huge deal. Things that we liked over here became cool to them. Things that they liked became cool to us. The reasons for that are probably longer than this podcast to go into. Maybe we'll do it another time. But eventually, I think as we got older, kids that had grown up on this stuff, we'd encounter it, and that aesthetic style was appealing. This stuff started showing up occasionally in VHS and video stores back when there were video stores. And you'd look around and be like, oh man, bubblegum crisis. What's this? Because, companies, weird names, really cool art. Companies like, I think Anamigo might have been one of the earlier ones there with that. But that's Robert Woodhead's company. Guy that designed Wizardry, which is one of the seminal RPG games. Anyway, he became important in importing anime. But Bubblegum Crisis and some other things. And you'd look at go home and watch it and be like, I have no idea what's happening, but this is so cool.
Yeah. It was so adult.
It was so adult.
It was so adult.
You were stuck with a dub at 90% of the time because you didn't have a DVD player, so you didn't have separate channels.
Well,
for
DVDs
subs.
weren't even out yet. That was Laserdisc era.
Exactly. So if you wanted subs, you had to have a Laserdisc. And
yeah. More ancient
I don't think
technology.
I ever had a laser disc.
ask.
But we'd still watch them, and it was fun. And then the very elements that made it, that caused them to change the things we watched in the 80s, made it appealing as we got older. Sex and violence. In addition to the great storytelling, the adult element of it, the fact was when you're a teenager and there's a cartoon with naked people in it, that's pretty cool. And that caused, there's this thing called Ninja Scroll, and there are naked ladies in it, and people get chopped up, and you
I remember how controversial that was.
Yeah, and it became this sort of like secret object that was passed around by people, and
Not Playboy.
Kind of, yeah, in a way, and we treated it because attitudes about pornography were also very different than before the internet, and it wasn't nearly as accessible to young people as it is now. And so people looked at that and thought, we weren't sure if it was porn or not, but we knew it was interesting. But then, holy cow, it's freaking amazing. The story is incredible, and the art is stunning. And that led, even things like Ghost in the Shell, which is great storytelling. There's naked people running around through it, and that was, and again, the violence, the blood, and then past the shock value, that started to gradually roll. And then you had things like, you had Totoro come along. From one end, wow, look at these beautiful, cute things. And then on the other hand, you have something like Graves of the Fireflies, which gained critical acclaim and helped raise awareness that there's this whole art form. And then it just kind of rolled out. And okay, I've talked enough. Somebody else say something. Yay, anime!
Yay, anime! No,
This is super interesting.
Good.
Like the way it came to America and the way it influenced us.
Especially
was
like when you
awesome.
finally saw like the maturity, like when you're saying with like Ninja Scroll, like before that, like a lot of, and like with Bubblegum Crisis and stuff, maybe even still like anime and just like maybe cartoons in general in America are still revered as children's things. I mean, you're seeing more of that breakaway with, Bob's Burgers and more comedic sort of things. Like Simpsons, of course, is a big change with that, and it's just more
Archer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Archer,
Not
of
for
course now.
kids.
Like there's a
No.
lot more that's not for kids now, and it's kind of
Yes.
becoming a thing. But when you typically look at cartoons, people in America anyway, they think, hey, that's for kids. And it's kind of cool to see that point where anime in America started becoming more than just for kids, or when they stopped adapting it just for kids kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say just to kind of tack on to that, what I found really interesting is if you look at the transition from like the 80s to the 90s, where the 80s, like you see a lot more of that sanitation of like really trying to chop it down, really make it palatable for an American market. One thing, I don't know if you remember this, Jared, but I mentioned in a previous podcast was Warriors of the Wind, which was the American adaptation of Nausicaa.
That's right.
And people who love the original hate that version of the dub because they chopped out like 20 minutes of it to like make it feel tighter and more, action oriented for an American audience, and changed, kind of the feel of it through that. But you have that for the 80s. And then in the 90s, even in American cartoons, you start seeing this filtration of more mature themes. I mean, even in American cartoons, we got gargoyles.
Yeah.
Batman, the animated series, was
Yeah.
really dark for a cartoon.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, I feel like you start to see this transition in general, and that's when like you start seeing more anime come in from Japan as people are demanding it to be imported. I was really fortunate because I grew up here in the Bay Area, so I could go down to San Francisco's Japantown, and they have that video store that you and I have talked about, and you could get tapes of Bubblegum Crisis, Oh My Goddess, and a bunch of other stuff, right?
Yeah.
That was really popular in the 90s.
Yeah, but it's interesting that you would still get these butchered anime. Like Sailor Moon is always the perfect
Sailor
example
Moon,
of
yes.
something that just. It's already kind of hard to follow, but it's a lot harder in the dub versions where, they change things completely. They cut things out. It was like.
Change genders.
Change
just to make it
genders and all
different
that
for
other
yeah.
stuff. Like I remember in high school, I wasn't even allowed to watch. We had an anime club the last year I was in high school. It had just gotten formed, and we weren't allowed to watch Sailor Stars because there was, people who were changing genders, and it was too scandalous, and it was like, really? Like I remember our anime club was just flabbergasted that the principal, who was like the super Puritan person, was like, no, you can't watch that. That's inappropriate for children. We're like, we're 17, 18 years old
It's
now.
amazing what's going to destroy our minds at any given time.
Yeah, and it's just funny looking back on that now, where it's like that's the thing you're worried about.
It's kind of nice to see that anime has kind of moved past that, or at least adaptions and translations has finally moved past of boiling down animated before just kids, especially
Yeah.
on TV and stuff.
yeah.
And then because I think that's largely due to the fact that from the 90s, you start hitting like the early 2000s where you actually start seeing it pop up onto, regular mainstream cable networks, or where Cartoon Network is playing stuff, and you have Naruto, and I think Bleach starts coming on, as and you hit this like peak in like 2007, 2008, where everybody's watching it. Everyone knows Naruto. They don't even really necessarily care that's anime, but it's not like in the 80s where it's actually not even talked about that's anime. People know it is, but they don't necessarily care that it is.
And cable and the internet, that's a big part. That changed everything because there were more outlets, there were more ways to get it out there, and people in cable services were more willing to take risks, and they found new audiences that had never been discovered before. They discovered, these kids had all grown up and they wanted more. And the cable channels were able to, and now the internet has
I know.
Just
it's
changed
amazing.
everything.
It's so amazing that I can go onto Funimation.com or Crunchyroll or even Hulu, although they still stick ads in there, which I'm not cool with.
Yeah.
I'm like, I paid for this service. Why is there an ad?
Yeah.
And I can just watch one of at least 30 current series. It's amazing.
It is.
My mind is blown every time it happens.
Simulcast? I still can't get my head around that.
I know.
Simulcast was me watching a VHS tape at my house, calling my best friend on the phone, and she's watching like a similar VHS tape. It's like, so what anime are you watching? Well, I'm watching Rama. What are you watching? I'm watching, Slayers.
So one thing I'm really curious about is when did like anime reach maturity in a sense for other countries? Like obviously we've all lived in the United States. It's kind of what we did.
I don't know.
And we have a lot of listeners just from all over the world. So let us know because super interested. I want to know like how was anime interpreted in your country? Like was it adapted or was it translated? There's obviously a very big difference between that.
I feel like the European market wouldn't butcher it quite as much as the very puritanical American market, but that is an assumption on my part. So if you live in Europe and you grew up watching anime, we'd love to know, was it adopted? Was it adapted? Did you adopt anime characters? Did they have subs? How are the dubs? Yeah, I'm really curious. That's a really good question.
Yeah, and in Europe, you think, probably the nudity maybe not as big a deal, and I'm making broad assumptions here. But on the other hand, we had to have, what was in England, it was Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
I saw that when I went to England in high school, and I was like, why couldn't they have
Because
for their
ninja were bad.
assassins? Yeah.
Ninja were too violent for children.
Really?
Yeah. And they wouldn't let them use the word.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that because it totally baffled me. I was like, why? Is this a different show? I was like, no, it's not a different show, but they can't use the word ninja. But that blew my mind. But that's a great example.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just processing this. Hold on, give me a bit,
But
guys.
then think about how it's that thing about assumptions again. People looking at us and being like, "Oh my goodness, breasts! How terrible!"
Right.
A rear end, and they just look at us like, "What's wrong with you people?"
We won't edit out the head getting cut off, but we'll censor the chest area.
Yeah, it's a very different way of looking at the world.
America.
Yay, America.
Yay, anime! I'm just going to keep saying that now.
So, Jared, I'm curious,
that.
what was the anime that really made you realize that this was a phenomenal medium?
Okay, well, as a kid, it was Robotech. Even though that's an adulterated, butchered, convoluted thing, I'd never seen anything like that. I'd never seen animation like that. And again, you look at it now, and it doesn't impress all that much, but the sense of speed and scale and light in those space battles just grabbed me. But also the fact that there was a story that didn't make a lot of sense about rival pilots and alien interaction, and I was just like, it's kind of like watching a really freaky version of Star Wars, and I like that. And so I think as a child, Robotech just sucked me in. As an adult, Grave of the Fireflies probably that knocked me flat. Have you guys watched it?
No, I've seen Barefoot Gen though.
Okay, well that's a whole other world of pain.
Yeah.
Grave's actually better, I think, and some of that's because it doesn't actually deal with the nuclear attacks. It's about starvation. Somehow even worse. Yeah, and but it's beautiful. In Japan, if I remember right, that was released as a double feature with Totoro, which I don't even know what to do with.
Whoa.
I feel like I kind of get it though, because it's like
Totoro came after, so you had to pick me up.
exactly right. So you would watch Grave of the Fireflies first, and then when you felt like you couldn't go on in life, they would put on Totoro.
Yeah.
Sorry, you.
But yeah, that really grabbed me. And I've continued to follow it through life. I still riveted on Mononoke. Also, and again, I realize these are. I know again, I'm a casual, guys. But
No, everyone
Don't
loves
apologize. I
Mononoke.
hate that. It's
That's
like
fine.
gaming, like hardcore
Ghibli is
versus
amazing.
casual.
Yeah.
There's nothing casual about Ghibli.
Okay, and then of course, like everybody, Bebop, and the last 2 episodes of Champloo, which I think are really good. Champloo, I can take or leave some of it, but I think the ending's great.
Yeah.
And the beginning also, actually.
We've come to the right club because we're going to talk all about Cowboy Bebop, especially my favorite episode so far.
Which
So you
which
guys
one?
wanna-
Episode 8,
Oh, okay.
Waltz for Venus. I
You
loved
guys
it.
want to jump into the watch party?
Yeah,
You
I
ready to
think and it's a great segue too because there's something that you said about
Segue.
Robotech that I wanted to at least thematically apply to episode 7 because I actually ended up liking 7 better than 8.
Awesome. Ooh,
7 was
oh.
good too.
They're both really good.
They're both really good.
So if you guys haven't tuned into this before, Anime Watch Party is where we pick apart 2 episodes of Cowboy Bebop, and this of course will change once we finish the series. So this week we're watching episodes 7 and 8, and that is Heavy Metal Queen and Waltz for Venus. So join in, tweet to us, and tell us what you like about Cowboy Bebop, and of course watch along with us. So let's jump in. I guess we'll go ahead and start with episode 7, Heavy Metal Queen, which is fantastic. I want to kick this off with a Twitter comment we had, and this was Ian Barkis, and he says, Bebop, episode 7, truckers in space, which is true. So that's like one of the best things about Bebop is just that it encompasses so much of their world. It's not so unrelatable because they have so many things. It's like, well, this is how this evolved in this future that's, could happen eventually one day. And like, it doesn't hide anything. It shows like every little bit. It's
The seedy parts, the posh parts,
Yeah,
the
like-
normal everyday parts.
it just translate everyday life into this like wonderful futuristic kind of dark place in like such a great way.
Yeah, in a way, in one sense, similar to Star Wars in the grittiness and the lived-in nature of it, and another very far away because Star Wars is more operatic, and then you have a much more grounded, hard sci-fi view. from
Right.
Cowboy
Star Wars
Bebop.
has its own thing going on, whereas Bebop you can do a little bit more relations because it does have like things that are common in our everyday lives.
Yeah, exactly.
So
No, I was thinking, I was watching Voices of a Distant Star getting ready for this and just looking at that mid-2000s Japan that they present, where he's walking around checking his phone, and it looks like the little town I used to live in Japan, but it's still Japan of the future. Bebop does that better than anybody.
Yeah.
I think Firefly steals a lot from Bebop. In the way they try to
Okay,
handle the future.
every time I watch an episode, there's always something that comes up where I think to myself, oh, I feel like I'm watching Firefly right now. But this came before that.
Yeah, I think
So, it's
I think
funny
the-
to me.
Imitation is the best form of flattery. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't
Speaking
seen
of
Firefly.
which,
Me
oh,
neither.
you should
I watched
totally.
the first episode and I
you
was
should
really bored.
totally.
I was so bored. The first episode. I turned it off.
Oh,
Did you watch the first episode?
did you actually
or did
watch
you watch
the first episode?
The first one that was available, so maybe
Oh.
I messed up.
Use your rule of 3.
'Kay.
Actually, use your rule of 4 because to me, the 4th episode for Firefly is one of the best.
Which one's the fourth?
Shindig.
Oh yeah, Shindig's great. Shindig's so good.
So definitely, and like honestly, there's a little bit of a story to it that gets woven through, like stuff part of like the meta like world kind of
Right.
stuff.
Like Bebop.
But if you watch it out of order, it's not terrible, honestly. And so if you want to understand why people love Firefly so much, just start with Shindig. Like honestly, it's kind of self-encapsulated. You get to know the characters really well, and it's just fun. So it's really good.
I wrote it down. Watch Firefly because I keep
Yes.
hearing about it.
No,
I've
I
heard
mean,
about it so much. That's why I
you
checked
should.
it out. I was just like,
And
meh.
there was something that happened in episode 8 where I saw it, and I was like, oh, that's Serenity. I think you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
I do. Absolutely.
I don't want to.
Princess Serenity?
I don't. It's the movie that's based on the universe for Firefly. But I don't
right.
want to spoil anything beyond that. People
Okay.
who've watched those will understand what I'm saying, and I'll leave it at that.
So it has like Bebop influences in Firefly. Like,
Absolutely,
Like a lot.
absolutely.
Huge.
So I had watched some like Bebop way back when it was like circulating among the community, but I forgot it all. And so coming back to it and watching it like properly in order, like one episode at a time, I just can't get over how much it reminds me of Firefly.
Yeah, it's that same kind of realistic future we were discussing. A group of kind of madcap characters thrown together, traveling around, just trying to make it, being pursued for mysterious reasons, lots of hidden pasts. It's the same thing. It's Bebop. It's what makes Bebop great.
And
All right, well, I
think-
love Bebop, so I'm
I
hoping
still
like
actually
this.
think Bebop's actually better executed though.
Ooh, that's interesting.
I do. I do think there's more flaws in Firefly, but that's a whole different conversation. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll get back to Firefly.
So back to Bebop.
Back to Bebop, it's week 7.
But speaking of homage and like homages in general, episode 7, I love. Like I could see why most people would prefer 8, but what I loved about 7, it had that wonderful 80s like action. Like, do you know what I'm talking about? Like, like all the anime that came over. That was translated and even butchered to a degree, as you kind of pointed out. But they always had this great action feel, right? Like things were always moving, things were happening. Like there was like these dramatic points, but it would never felt over the top. And like I feel like episode 7 does that so well. Like I feel like it's actually paying tribute to that kind of like period in
I
time.
absolutely agree with that assessment. That sense of juking motion, the camera following things around. So it feels, it's almost like watching an episode of Battlestar Galactica where you've got that really wonderful direction in space going on. It has that same kind of vibe to it
But
of
way less
motion.
depressing.
But way less depressing.
Way less depressing.
Or none of that lost sort of vibe. We're like,
Yeah.
what's going on? I don't know.
Yeah, and I like the relationship between Spike and VT. Like there was something
VT is
about
such
that.
a
VT is
fantastic
such a good character.
She's wonderful.
She reminds me a little bit of Large Marge, but like a really friendly, not scary version, where it's just, it's this buff female trucker who's very confident. But I love like the ending where you see the locket and Spike figures out who she is because she's heard of her bounty hunter husband and why she was like, bounty hunters are always lying scum and blah, blah. Like everything sort of ties together at the end in this wonderful way that I just, it just makes the feels.
It's a
you
very
guys-
good package.
I feel like, this is not asking for spoilers, and obviously we don't do spoilers here, but
Try not to.
I feel like we have to see her again at some point because I don't know if you noticed, but her cat is named Zeros. And the dog is named Ein, which is the word which means one in German. So I'm like, they're like
Maybe
they go. Like,
there's just a counting of like
Maybe they have a
animals.
bird.
I don't know. We'll find out, right?
attention to
But
July
or something
I
like
just
that.
love those little details like that. I just love those
I also
details.
really love that we get to see how bounty hunters perceived, like a super really depth analysis, and like how like bounty hunting affects other people in the world. Like you get to see how she was just like, oh, obviously BT hated it for a reason. Like she's just not heartbroken. It's just like, oh.
Yeah. I love those little, like, again, sorry, I just super love this episode. Those little gestures where it's like, oh, well, you figured out my name. Here's the bundle of money that has come from this game that I've been playing with people. And he only just takes back, his one contribution to it.
So good.
I know.
Like, at the beginning of the episode when he's like getting rid of his hangover and he's like, ugh, and then like
The animation of that was
fight.
great, too.
Yeah, like, there's a fight going on.
He
He's
just
like,
looks
whatever.
completely-
Ever had
Yeah.
a bad hangover? You just don't want no fighting, no anything. And so you can understand why he's so upset when like he spills his egg on himself and it's like that's just like the last straw for him. It's just like, nope,
I
that's
just
it.
wanted to feel better.
Yeah.
Not better for him. So sad. But he got a cool adventure.
Yeah, I like that
And
Faye
friends.
got the wrong guy too. Like she made an assumption about the one big guy. It's like the nerdy Woody Allen dude who she's actually trying to get, and he's sitting there freaking out, like trying to hide his dragon tattoo, and he runs out and almost like trips, and she's trying to seduce the one guy, and then she's like, "Don't be so unmistakable," because he has like
It's
some
like the eel
weird
tattoo.
eel tattoo.
What the heck?
I laughed so hard when that happened. I was like, "That is funny."
Faye is such an interesting character, but I do worry that it's going to end up being caricature instead of, like she's going to end up being kind of one-dimensional comedic relief as opposed to.
I think we're gonna find out
You
more
get some
about
more.
her.
Yeah, you get. She gets her
yeah.
own stuff pretty soon, but then we get a different sort of comedic relief. Obviously, see some with like Ein, but that expands more in a few.
All right,
next
it's okay. I don't want any. I don't want any spoilers. And by the way, for the people who said to me that they also feel like anything that even hints at knowing anything about a series is a spoiler, thank you. I just want an argument with somebody else in my life. So
You're one of them.
I can't help it. For me, it's more of I get too much into anticipating. So if you tell me, oh, there's something happens in episode 8, like I'll be so focused on that I can't actually just enjoy it
My
and
wife
process it.
is the same way. I've
Yes.
learned
There's
to
more
live
of me.
An ironclad, lip sewed shut existence
You,
because
sir,
of that.
are a gentleman.
It's,
Well, you noticed that I stopped Evan from kind of spoiling something
it was
the other
good, it was
week,
good.
and I was like,
It was
I felt
good.
really bad doing that, but I was like, even I don't want to know.
It's just
and
like
I'm
you're jumping in front of the bull. You're like, no. That's like, sorry.
Except when she leaps, she's like, "Yay, anime!"
Oh God. Okay, yeah. Is there anything else on the Heavy Metal Queen?
I don't know. How did you guys feel about it? I've been talking this whole time.
no,
like
yeah.
episode
I thought
7,
it's a
guys.
Great
It's
contrast to episode 6, which was so much, sympathy for the devil was
Yeah.
so sort of serious and somber and mysterious. And this just has this awesome 80s heavy metal rock and
It's just
vibe.
more fun, too.
It's
Like,
humorous, but it has some really
touching moments.
touching moments. Yeah.
And I think almost all the Bebop episodes do a good job of achieving that, like having some sort of emotion and relating in that way.
Yeah, it's talking in old people terms. It's like a good mixtape. The seasons are put together well so that the tone of one episode offsets the tone of the previous quite often.
Awesome mixtape one.
So awesome mixtape 1, absolutely, or 2.
Yes, or 2.
Or 2.
Side 2.
Side
Yes,
2. Ooh,
it's true.
So,
Guardians of the Galaxy reference.
well played.
Waltz for Venus.
I'll let you guys go first because I wasn't as keen on this one, but I want it to be positive. So let's start with.
So I just wanted to say that the dub is phenomenal.
Is it? I'll go back and watch it with dub.
Good. It's so funny. Like kudos especially to this episode. Like of course, like I think the dub overall as well. Like I've watched most of the sub in Cowboy Bebop, and so now I wanted to go back and just watch the dub just to get a different experience. And they did such a good job with this episode.
Yeah, the dub is really good. The only reason I prefer the sub is just because I'm such a fan of Megumi Hayashibara, who
Right.
plays Faye in this. And so that's the only reason, basically, is that, she's in it and a couple other voice actors I really like are in it. But the dub is really good.
Well, the whole series, honestly, I think that the dubs are strong. That's how I first watched it, and I've gone back, of course, and done the subs, and I do prefer that, but I think that's mostly because I'm a Japanese snob.
Yes. Psychopaths is the same way. I'm surprised how good the dub is. Like, I've been watching it in the dub, and it's really phenomenal how when you get a really good dub for a Japanese anime,
Right.
like how much it just becomes a more, I don't want to say visceral experience, but because it is in your language, you're not sitting there reading the text
It's
as well
different.
as trying to. You
Sure.
can actually focus more on the anime.
Yeah.
So
It's really cool.
Rocco, who's a very silly guy, obviously in the very beginning of the episode, like that's just definitely the highlight of the dub for me. He's just so charismatic and just silly and dumb. It's just done so well. So definitely check that out if you haven't.
did that.
Yeah. Like that's probably one of the, of course, aside from the actual plot of the episode, it's like just one of the big things that stood out for me. Like I was very surprised by. I was just like, this is like so. It's just so funny.
Rocco himself is such an interesting character. Like, he's so annoying in the beginning. Like, you totally get why Spike wants to ditch him. But by the end, like, the whole arc with him, it turns, he's goofy, but he's really doing this illegal stuff for his younger sister who's
it's
sick
so
with venous
sad.
sickness. And, I know. I don't know. Like, and I like, there's a reference to Kung Fu and Bruce Lee. And we're talking about you got to be like water, and apparently that's a famous quote by Bruce Lee. And then Rocco starts doing the like all that
Yeah.
Bruce Lee kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And at first I didn't know where this was going.
Yeah, it's really funny. That's the part in the dub. And I looked up the voice actor. His name is Tom Fan. So he did a phenomenal job.
Okay.
Thank you for doing so cool.
So, Megan,
Not
you were
like
sitting.
he listens, but it's just really good.
Maybe he does. He might. I mean,
That'd be pretty cool.
Megan, you were sitting over there, like kind of like, yeah. So, what is it about this one?
I just love the different emotions. It starts off very silly and goofy. I mean, even on the ship to Venus, you have a Tom and Jerry cartoon playing in
Yes.
the background, but then the three names of the criminals are, I think it's Huey, Louie, and Dewey. Like
Yeah.
Donald
Yes.
Duck's nephews.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a reference to that. I saw that. Like I caught
And I
those
was
two American kind of
I
cultural
love that because
references.
one is like Warner Brothers or like Looney Tunes, and then one is Disney.
I don't know who owns Tom and Jerry. I don't think it's Looney Tunes either. I think it's
remember
another
anymore.
syndication company. But
no, but yeah,
but Huey, Dewey, and Louie are Disney.
yeah.
Yeah, that's Disney for sure, but I just like that it's different companies. And then they have like the whole fight scene where Spike's like half asleep and he's like knocking into people, and then Faye comes out with her perfume and she's like, yep, that's the end of you. And then you have this really funny comedic beginning, and then it sort of gets serious when they're going after the gang, and Faye's led on a wild goose chase, and then you have the end where you think Rocco's going to get away, and he uses the Bruce Lee move like Spike taught him, and then just boom, he gets shot. I didn't see that coming. And I didn't see that coming at all, and I was like, no way, he has to live, he's going to live, and he doesn't.
his sister.
So the whole thing with the sister at the end was probably the most touching thing I've seen in anime in a while.
The worst part of that death, honestly, though, for me, was Spike running off. I'm like, he's gonna die. Don't let him die alone. Like, that was actually the worst part for me. I'm like, we know he's not gonna make it. Like, stay with him. Like, that guy dies alone.
But he does get to say, you know, I wonder if in another life we could have been friends. Like, he does have that sort of...
Sorry.
No, I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. I'd never considered that, but that does seem a little odd for Spike, especially.
It was just... So this is me being the negative Nancy, right, about this episode. But this is the one that I actually felt like the pacing was not quite where I would expect of a Bebop episode. And it's because I feel like they crammed so much in at the end. It's like the actual complaint I've had about Arslan, where like stuff is kind of happening, and all of a sudden at the end you just get this huge like thing shoved at you, right? So suddenly you have this huge fight, and then he gets shot, and then Spike goes running. Spike has an actual really emotional reaction to that, right? Because he's like, I'm gonna find you a doctor, I gotta go. And then he leaves him, and this guy dies on this note where he's like, well, maybe we could have been friends in a different life, sort of thing. And then you have the sister, and it's like, it's just so much is compressed into those last, like, I don't know, 5 minutes that I just felt that was weird for Bebop, because I feel like they normally, like, stretch, they sprinkle that more evenly through. And, like, that was just like, whoa. And I don't know what's coming in episode 9, so there may be resolution.
But
there's probably
like
not.
That scene with the sister where he finds the seeds for the plant. I mean, I think it wasn't so sudden. I could see it sort of foreshadowing something at that point. So I didn't have a issue with the pacing in this case, and I've had issues with the pacing in past episodes. So it's interesting that I feel the opposite, where I feel like the pacing was pretty good because I could actually see where it was going when he opens up the music box and the seeds are in there, and she's blind and she's pointing a gun at him, and just it's very poignant. And then at the end, he visits her in the hospital, and she's like, I never got to see my brother. What was he like? He's like, you did basically see your brother. He really was awesome. And I love that. I love that ending. It's so touching.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's very
Sorry, that came out way more catty than I meant it. It was just more.
Really?
No, it was just more.
Really, Meghan?
It was just more because like that was actually like my biggest complaint about it, because that dialogue exchange at the very end felt really kind of rushed to me. Like it felt incomplete. Where
Maybe it kinda
she's
feels
just like, no, go. Like I don't want to. Like he was a bad person and he's dead, and I just need to process this. And Spike doesn't even tell her. Like that's like a prime opportunity to tell her what really happened. He's just like, okay.
I mean, Spike isn't. Although we love him, he's not necessarily the best person. I mean, he's a cool guy, and we really admire who he is. But I think this is kind of an awesome time to look at his character and who he is. He's not a hero.
And they address that.
He doesn't try to be that.
They mentioned Rocco's I was once a beautiful person a long time ago, and
Right.
he brings that kind of thing up. And Spike sort of has this symmetry with it. It was like I feel like the beautiful me died a long time ago.
Yeah, and Spike almost looks scared when he was running away from Rocco. I mean, he's like, oh, I gotta find you a doctor, whatever. He can't lose him, but he also knows he has to leave because he's gonna die, and he hasn't. As far as we've seen, he hasn't had to deal with that with his friends. It's.
I don't know. There's that foreshadowing that's been
So we've had
the
that weird
flashbacks,
scene, right?
with the rose and
Right.
and the.
And maybe he's traumatized and he doesn't want to deal with that again. And
I don't
obviously
know.
him and Rocco kind of
Maybe
got a little bit of a bond.
I don't know, because that also, I think your interpretation, not your, but the general interpretation of that could be based on which version you're listening to. Because I was watching the sub, and the way that his Spike's voice actor voiced those lines about hang on, I'm getting you a doctor, I didn't get at all a sense of I'm freaking out because I can't be here right now. It felt more like I'm freaking out because you can't leave me. You cannot leave this earth. That, or well, relatively speaking, right? But
Right.
You have a sister, you have this going on. You seem like a decent human being, kind of. That's how I took it.
Sure. I think those could both be kind of mixed though, within.
I feel like Spike sees a little bit of himself in Rocco, because Rocco's sort of
I
caught up
definitely
in the
got that
mob,
sense.
and they hinted that Spike is a little bit caught up in the mob, and
Caught up in-
Rocco
yeah,
wants to
some.
be like Spike, he wants to be cool like Spike, and he's so not, and then for a second he almost is, and they just,
And then
I
it
don't
kills
know.
him.
Yeah,
It's
oh my gosh,
Oh.
it's so hard. What did you
Very
think,
sad.
Jared? Because you're a huge Bebop fan.
I'm sitting over here trying not to spoil anything. Exactly. All the assumptions that people are talking about and all the guesses they're making about characters. I'm just going to sit over here and be like,
And we thank you,
guys
for that.
Can you
you
talk
guys
about
have-
8? When you first saw 8, how did you feel? How did you feel when you saw it?
made the same observation that Alaina did with a different conclusion. I thought the end was frenetic, but I liked that. I like the sense of death and trauma having a frenetic feel to it. And when the shooting does happen, it is pretty unexpected. And I'm a big Bruce Lee fan. It reminds me of the point that Bruce Lee once made about the fact that why not just put a gun up to somebody and go bang when it comes to martial arts training and the rest of that. I remember thinking about that. But you have this unexpected moment happen, and there is this crazy pacing. But I thought the idea was to try to compress that into a frenetic feeling that was supposed to mirror what maybe Spike was feeling or experiencing. I don't know if I'm right about that. That's my assumption. I like the episode. Compared to 7, I think it's more on tone for the series overall, and I like it. I also enjoy 7, but I think it's a solid episode of an excellent series. That's my non-spoilery, non-speculative take.
You did very well. You didn't spoil anything.
You guys keep saying nice things. I'm just like, yay.
No,
Yay.
we invited you here so we could just haze you for an hour, Jared.
So, I do have a completely unrelated question to ask you.
Sure.
Has anybody anime-fied you? Oh, wow. Bro, they hit the mic there. Somebody's going to hear that. Has anybody anime-fied you guys yet? Like, has that happened? Like, have there been
That
anime?
sounds dangerous. What is
No,
that?
no. I mean, like, so sooner or later, fans of IGN shows, you'll see drawings of people. You have the NBC Panda Musks with all the guys from NBC drawn, or you get the Beyond guys drawn as stick figures or something. Have you guys been turned into anime yet?
Not to my knowledge.
No.
I
But I
played
mean,
with some doll makers, but
It's
that's
only
secret.
it's only episode 6.
I know. I'm just
So-
just wondering, internet, if that's happened.
Anyway.
We're gonna do Jared first.
So,
Sue Jared.
That face.
So silly. Okay, well, yeah, I think that pretty much concludes our watch party for this week. So we will be watching 9 and 10. We're getting so far.
Oh, I know.
It's happening so fast. But
It's
yay.
hard not to keep going ahead, too.
Yeah,
We've been
it
trying
is.
to keep
I actually have
on
to.
base.
Yeah, I was like, okay, close the window because
some
I'm
of us
gonna
just,
keep
like-
Because
going.
I've been watching
tempting.
on, online. It'll be like the next episode will queue
Sure.
up, and I'd be like, no.
yeah, that's how I first watched Bebop. I just binged it. I was just, what? What? Holy cow! It was really great. It's one of the first shows I ever did binge watch, I think, in my life.
Fun fact.
Yeah, they're just certain shows.
Sorry.
You gotta
That
know.
was
It's
dumb.
good. No, it's good. Yeah, I don't know which is the first show I binge watched, but
I think
And-
mine actually has been Daredevil.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's only recently I've heard of binge watching. I know that just makes me sound so out of touch. But
No, the term hasn't existed all that long, I don't think, and there was no term for it then. This was just like, I will put a new DVD into the player. It was that kind of thing.
yeah, I mean, I remember going to the VHS store and sort of binging on Slayer's Next because it wasn't out in the U.S. And
Oh,
so
wow.
my friend and I would try to get as many VHS tapes as we were allowed to take out. So she would get Ray Earth and I would get Slayer's Next. And
Nice.
we would sit there so I guess that's a kind of binge watching, but it's not like we got to watch all 26 episodes at once.
That's as binge as the law allowed at the time.
I like that. I'm going to go with that. So I binged on VHS tapes.
There we go.
did it before it was cool.
I was one of those people. I'm the hipster anime fan.
There we go.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it's time to close the show.
On that note,
Yeah, on that note, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you guys have any comments, feedback, anything, check out our Facebook group. I said it earlier in the episode, but it's facebook.com/groups/IGN Anime Club. We hang out there. We'll try to respond to comments we can. I know a lot of people tag me and stuff, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, I'm in Oklahoma trying not to die from a tornado. So didn't get to respond to all of
I'm
them,
always
but we
on
try.
Twitter, so that's like usually
and
the
of
easiest way
course-
to get to me. But
Yeah, Twitter. I'm at Havoc Rose, and that's Havoc with a K.
at Meghan, MEGHAN_IGN.
I am at Morphine Ball.
That's a great name. I'm at Petty Comma Jared. That's COMMA in the middle.
And we have that awesome hashtag that Miranda came up with, #IGNanime.
Yeah, so it's IGNIME. So hashtag that whenever you want to just cool anime shout out, see something cool. And of course, if you're watching Cowboy Bebop with us, please hashtag it so we can find it. We can read your comments on the show or post in the Facebook group. Yep. So, and sorry, we're still working on that email. I was like, yeah, we're gonna get it. Yeah, I'll get it. I'm sorry. Anyway, thank you guys again so much for joining us. And yay, anime.
Yay,
anime!
See you guys next week.
Bye.